Hi, Stephen Bruck with another Messianic Moment. Today is Friday, November 24th. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving in the year 2017, that is. And hey, check out the shirt. Have you seen this one? I have to get it right. There we go. And that's how I save the world. It's a little expensive, but it's a cool shirt. So today we're talking about the Parahsah, as you saw, V'Yetze, and he went out. What we have here is basically Jacob leaves, right? Remember last time? Mom said, hey, your brother wants to kill you. Get over to my brother Laban. He'll take care of you. Stay there until your brother cools off. Well, it ends up being quite a while for the brother to cool off. But Jacob goes. He meets God along the way at Bet El, which used to be called Lutz. He has a dream. He sees the angels coming up and down from heaven. So he calls that place, and God appears to him and confirms the promises through Abraham that he will be with him, he will bless him, and the world will be blessed through him. He goes to Laban, and while he's at the well, here comes Rachel, Laban's daughter, with the sheep. Jacob just like, boom, falls in love. It's lightning strikes. Jacob's got it. It's it. He's got the bug for the nice Jewish girl. So essentially he goes back. Laban stays with them. Laban is very good to him at first. Very brotherly, very nice. And he even comes to him after a month and says, hey, I should pay you something. You're working for me. What should I pay you? So Jacob says, I'll work 7 years for your daughter Rachel. Well, now things start getting a little wicked. Yeah. So he does a great job for him. 7 years later, he says, give me my wife. I want Rachel. And Laban says, no problem. Let's have a big, big celebration, right? So they have a big celebration. They have a typical wedding, 7 days. And Jacob goes into his wife and finds out, guess what? Next morning when it's light and he can see who's in there, it's not Rachel, it's Leah, the oldest. And he says, why'd you do this to me? I got to say, I like one thing about the people in the Bible that we don't do today. Today we just scream, you've messed me up, you've hurt me, you've done wrong. Back then, they didn't come right out and accuse somebody. They would say, why did you do this? Now, in a way, I know culturally they're kind of saying, hey, you did this to me, but they're saying, why? They always give people a chance to explain themselves. We don't do that today. I think we should do that. I think instead of just coming out and saying, hey, you this, hey, you that, we should come out and say, why did you do this? What's your reasoning? And I think we'd have a lot less road rage and other issues. Anyway, that's beside the point. So, Laban tells Jacob, well, hey, in this world here, we don't give the youngest before the oldest. So work another 7 years, and I'll give you Rachel. Meanwhile, finish up your week with Leah, and which he did. Little joke. And then he gets Rachel, so he spends a whole week with Rachel. So there's 2 weeks of wedding, and at least Laban gives him Rachel right then, his wife. And then but he still has to work another 7 years. So he comes to the end of the 7 years. Now it's 14 years, and he says, hey, I think it's time for me to leave. And Laban says, oh, no, but I got to give you something. You deserve wages. And Jacob says, well, what I'll do is I'll take all your speckled and spotted and dark sheep. I'll take all the ones that normally you wouldn't want. I'll take them as my wages. Laban says, no problem. Meanwhile, he turns around, goes to his boys and say, pull out all the speckled, dark, and everything. Get them out of here. Take them to your flocks far away where Jacob won't be able to see them. So Laban kind of sticks it to Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob says, all right, I know what's going on here. I got your number. And he manages to somehow genetically manipulate the sheep, the sheep and the goats, so that when they mate, because the females would go to drink from the trough, and when the females, basically what it is the females are drinking, they can't get away, the males sneak up behind them, and they mate. And he set it up so that genetically, the stronger would be spotted and speckled and dark. And he would take all those, and the weaker ones then would be Laban's. So eventually, Jacob's built up this great, strong flock, and Laban's flock is kind of, wimpy. Now the sons start saying he's stealing all our father's stuff. And the father's attitude changes, and Jacob says, well, let's get the heck out of Dodge while he's not watching, and he sneaks out. Meanwhile, Rachel steals the family gods as they're leaving. Jacob doesn't know this. Laban gets a little ticked. They stole the gods. He snuck out of here. He didn't even have the niceness to say goodbye. So Laban goes after him, and he's going to kind of teach him a lesson. But God comes to Laban and says, don't mess with my boy. I got his back, don't mess with him. So Laban catches up and says, hey, I could have done you harm because all these are mine. You know, these are my daughters, my children, my grandchildren, my sheep. But so be it. God said, leave you alone, I'm going to leave you alone. So let's make a pact. Here's a rock. You don't come over to harm me, and I won't go over there to hurt you. And then Jacob leaves. And during this time, of course, we have the story of how between Leah and Rachel and the handmaidens, how Jacob becomes the father of 11 children. Benjamin's not born till later. And that's the end of this parsha. And it's an interesting story. It's fascinating. But what I want to talk about is all the deceptions. You know, there's a whole bunch of deceptions going on here. It's really kind of frustrating because what are we doing here? All these deceptions happening. I'm looking at the deceptions. I want to read them to you. So let's go over it. First of all, Jacob deceives Isaac. All right? Gets the blessing from Isaac that I think he was entitled to because he bought the birthright, but still he had to deceive Isaac to get it. He goes to Laban, and Laban deceives Jacob by switching brides. And Laban then gets 7 years of service from Jacob because of what he did. Then Laban removes the wages Jacob asked for from his flock before Jacob can get to them. But then Jacob manipulates the breeding to give him stronger flocks, and Laban gets the weaker flocks. And when he has it, Jacob then sneaks away from Laban, so Laban can't take anything back or even say goodbye. And finally, Rachel had stolen the family gods from her father and then lies to him. She tells him that she's in her time of nidah, and that's why she can't stand up and greet him. Meanwhile, she's sitting on top of the family gods. Now, let me explain real quickly what the family gods mean. Back then, and again, obviously Laban is not a monotheistic guy. Back then, the oldest son would inherit the family gods, and all the other brothers and sisters and even cousins sometimes would come to them and ask them to pray to the gods for good crops or healthy children or whatever they wanted. And there would be some remuneration for this prayer. So the family gods were sort of like the inheritance of the firstborn. So whereas Jacob kind of manipulated the inheritance of the firstborn from Esau for himself, Rachel didn't manipulate anything. She just stole them outright. You know, and these deceptions, and you think, so what's the message today? The message is the same thing that Sir Walter Scott said. Let's see what Sir Walter Scott said. Sir Walter Scott said, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." Right? I'm looking at it right over there. And you're looking at it right in my face. And that's what happens here. We see these deceptions, and I'm thinking, these are the patriarchs of the children of Israel. This is the matriarch. You know, the people who set the goals. They set the standard for righteousness. And they lie, and they cheat, and they manipulate. Now, the rabbis will tell us that this is why we can believe the Bible. Because we're trying to establish the righteousness of a people, the God-given right of a people to inherit a land, and the fact that we are teaching the world how God wants us to act. And yet, look what we do. Abraham pimps his wife. Isaac pimps his wife. Jacob steals the birthright, quote unquote, even though we know I already say we do steal it. Rachel lies to her father. They steal the family gods. Jacob manipulates sheep to get the stronger, leaving his uncle with the weaker. The uncle switches out brides. And all this deception and lying that just builds and builds and builds and builds. And then later we read about the brothers conspiring to kill Joseph. It shows that the Bible is real because our heroes are still human beings. Our heroes make mistakes. Our heroes do the wrong thing. And they suffer for it. We see that. God also comes to protect them. So God stood on the side of Jacob. When Laban went to do him harm, God interceded and said to Laban, hey, don't touch my boy. So we see these things, but we need to realize that even though God can still work righteousness out of unrighteousness, like we'll read much later when Joseph says to his brothers, you intended evil, but God turned it to good. We should not deceive each other. And I'm not just talking about what Paul says about being open with each other and being completely transparent. We should not deceive anybody, especially not those who are deceivers. Right? If somebody lies to us or cheats us and we think, well, I'm going to get back at him, no, don't. Don't. Proverbs says to, poor, don't, Proverbs says that we should, and you can look it up. I'm not going to throw quotes at you here, but Proverbs basically says treat your enemies well, give them food and water. It's like putting hot coals on their head, meaning that it will wake them up. It'll show them this is the way to do it. Yeshua says pray for your enemies when they treat you bad. Turn the other cheek. We're told that doesn't mean let people hurt you, by the way. Don't let anybody hurt you. But if you're spiritually damaged, if somebody abuses you verbally or hurts you by sinning against you, don't react. I mean, the greatest proverb we can remember is essentially, vengeance is mine. Let the Lord repay. Don't return evil for evil. And that's what was happening here. People were returning evil for evil. We don't want to do that. We want to set a better example. Just because it's part of our nature to do that, we can overcome our nature. It's difficult. That's why we have the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, to help us overcome our nature. But we need to overcome our nature. We need to not do what the bad guys do because they do it, it must be okay, or they deserve it. Yes, they deserve to have the effects of what they do come back on their own head. And that's God's job. That's God's job. Right? Part of having faith in God isn't just faith in salvation, but faith in retribution, faith in justice. Okay? God will get to them. All right? It's not our job to do God's job. It's not our job to do God's job. All right? God will get them. We should be careful. We should keep away from it. People who like that, try not to deal with them. Sometimes you have to deal with them. You work with them. It's our politicians. Some people are just like that. In the family, we have people like that. All of us somewhere. We just have to deal with them and show them the right example. That's what we need to do. We need to be translucent, transparent, and honest. A white lie is a lie. A fib is a lie. And once you lie, you are a liar. That's it. It's like malaria. Once it's in your blood, it never goes away. It's like Marine Corps. Once a Marine, always a Marine, although Marines are much higher standard. So don't deceive people. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with others. Don't let deception trap you into this web of further deception. I'm going to leave you with a great quote. I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it was from Mark Twain, who used to say, I don't lie because my memory isn't that good. It's very tough to lie because you have to remember what you said to everybody. If you just tell the truth, it's always the same. So always be honest, tell the truth. Thank you for listening. Have a great Shabbat this weekend. Don't forget to like the video. Share me, please, if you like what I'm saying, even if you don't. Share me out. Let other people hear me. I'm trying to get out there. Go to my website, messianicmoment.com. Buy my books, and have a great Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you next time.